You have been good to me. Thank you. You have been so very kind. And I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate. I appreciate spending time with your pastoral family. I do love them deeply. And I don't say that. If you knew me, I don't say anything I don't mean. I just wish your pastor was a little bit more energetic. I love him, though. You've got a great pastoral family. And you are a wonderful church. And I am thankful that the Church of the Nazarene has a wonderful church in Lancaster, Kentucky. Right? Because you do know, church, the majority do not know him. I'm not talking about those who attend church. I'm talking about the majority do not know him. They do not have an intimate knowledge of who he is. They do not have a passion that rises from the very depths of their soul. Their day does not begin with him, and their night does not end with him. They just know about him. They do not know him. Isn't that a shame? We are in Easter week, and I've got a sermon that the Lord, it's not me. I tell you, my sermon was real soft. I was going to give you. Everybody's going to be happy and leave. This sermon, it's on God. This sermon may make you think. I think this sermon is going to convict me and everyone in this room. Are you okay with that? Because at the end of the day, we want to reflect Christ so purely, so succinctly, so brilliantly that the people who connect with us do not see us, but they see him, and they are overwhelmed by the glory of the God Almighty who went on a cross and died for them, and on the third day rose again. And if that doesn't get you excited, then I don't know what will, because that is the gospel. Praise the Lord. There's a man that was a pastor, he was a district superintendent. In fact, he was the youngest district superintendent in the history of the denomination at the time. He was a district superintendent at 39. 39. His name was Ponder Gillian. Ponder, isn't that a cool name? Isn't that a cool name? You know what I'm stuck with? I told the pastoral family. My mama, this is a true story. My mama called me, I'm not Andrew, I'm Andy, because she thought that Andy Griffin was a good man. Yeah, true story. As I told them, I could have been Otis or Aunt B, depending on the day. It didn't stop there. They wanted to penalize me, and so my father gave me the family middle name for this. This should be sin. This should be wrong. I ended the tradition, though. It went several generations, and I said, I've had enough of abusing children in this way. My middle name is Junior. Well, you're not supposed to laugh at that. Andy Junior. Junior not at the end. And I looked at my father and I said, Father, Dad, you have a nickname, you're Buck, to everybody that knows you, because your name is Orville Jr. He goes, yeah, if I had to suffer, you're going to suffer too. I kid you not. Ponder Gillian. I didn't have a name like Ponder. He was made to be yes. I was made to be a janitor in the Church of Nazarene. He just did nothing against janitors. I'm just saying. That's not a really popular name. In fact, I had a boss once that said, I'm going to make you some business cards. I said, okay. He gave them to me. The name was Andrew. I said, that's not my name. He said, if you want to work here, it is. True story. Ponder Gilling was his name. Ponder Gilling, I was a new pastor. And he had already retired, but started pastoring again, Dallas First Church of the Nazarene. He came out of retirement. And even though he had his doctorate, in fact, he was the president of Southern Nazarene University, SNU. Had been the president, had served the denomination. He took this church and he said, you know, I'm not a good enough preacher. And if you know anything about Ponder Gillian, he was one of the best preachers in our whole denomination. One of the most eloquent preachers. You know, yeah. One of the best preachers you've ever heard. And he went back to seminary at almost 70. He called up to enroll, and they said, why are you doing this? We have heard you at these community services. You're the most eloquent, most beautiful preacher we've ever heard. And he goes, I'm not good enough yet. Here I was 22 in my first assignment, getting eaten alive. And all I wanted to do was listen to him. He preached a sermon. I'm going to share excerpts of that sermon because that sermon was so powerful, and I want to give him credit because I don't want to steal from him. You understand me? Right? But it was so powerful, it infused itself to my soul and to my heart and to my mind. In fact, the title of the sermon was this, and it's the title of mine. It's a phrase I'm going to recant all the way through. Is Jesus everything to me, or is he something less? Now, I don't know if you heard me. Is Jesus everything to me, or is he something less? Now, I don't know about you, but when I think of holiness, pretty much sums it up. You think about that? Is Jesus everything to me, or is he something less? See, the problem is we don't like the word discipline, do we? Right? We'll say the word disciple, but we won't say discipline. But you know you can't have one without the other. Even in the name. So what we're going to talk about, if you're serious about the holiness life, if you're serious, you see, it's not just about living the holiness life. It's about living the holiness life to others so that you might win them to Christ. If you live the holiness life only in this room and never connect with your community and never bring souls in here and never try to win your family, then you're not understanding holiness. Holiness should get inside your soul, inside your shoes. It could cause you to just move out into the hedges and the highways and tell them about who Jesus is in the way you act, in the way you talk, in the way you love. That wasn't good enough. Hurry up. Come on. Give it to me. They ain't. That's pretty good stuff. Is that okay? I may have to need you to run again. I'm just teasing. It should though, right? So as we think about that, I want you to stand as we read our text. It is found, you'll see on the screen, Luke chapter 14, starting with verse 25. In some of your versions, if you're using the NIV, which we'll be reading from, it has a caption that says, "The cost of being a disciple." I'm here to tell you, folks, as I've said all week, do not believe the lie of the world, even if they say this is what Christianity looks like. Grace is freely given, but to be a disciple, there is a cost. What we want is we want to reflect Jesus without going through what Jesus went through. We want to skip right to Sunday resurrection and forget about Good Friday. This is what it says. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, he said, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, his wife and children, his brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple." You hear that? This is the words in red. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Will he not first sit down and estimate the cost to see if he has enough money to complete it? For if he lays the foundation and is not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule him, saying, "This fellow began to build and was not able to finish." Or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Will he not first sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he is not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off. And will any of you who does not give up everything he has, in the same way, any of you who does not give up everything he has cannot be my disciple. Verse 33 again. I'm going to read this again. In the same way, any of you who does not give up everything he has cannot be my disciple. Salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is fit neither for the soul nor the manure pile. It is thrown out. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Father, the world wants comfort and easy. The world wants a faith that you can drive through. Hear a few words, listen to bumper sticker theology. And then they can go home unchanged, unaffected. That's not what being a disciple is all about. So, Father, convict us tonight in areas that we are lacking, in areas that we're holding on to, in areas that are keeping us fully committed to you. Father, prick our heart. Is Jesus everything to me, or is he something less? In the name of Jesus Christ, we ask. You may be seated. One cannot magically leap from acceptance of Christ to a committed relationship. No more than if one who met on a blind date can be suddenly prepared for intimacy of marriage. There is no button to push, no incantation which suddenly propels you towards Christian maturity. No, it takes extreme amount of effort on our part in which we exercise discipline. It is amazing to me how discipline has become such a negative word. In fact, my wife, she used to when our kids were small, and she used to take in kids. She used to babysit kids, and one of the mothers came to us, and one of the mothers said this. One of the mothers said, you can watch my child, but you are not allowed to discipline them. You know what my wife said? You can watch your child, because the other children are going to be affected by that child. You understand what I'm saying? You can't do that. I think sometimes when we think about this Christian journey, we have distilled this journey down to, I go to the altar, even in the holiness. I've spent too much time over here. I'm going to come see you guys. They don't get offended. We've distilled this down to come to the altar once or twice. That's all we need. One's for salvation, one for sanctification. We're good. Let's go. I'll come to church. I'll give a little money in the plate. I'll show up on occasion to Sunday school. I'll come to Sunday night if I feel like it. Wednesday night if it feels good. And then I've done my job. I am a good Christian. Do you really think our Savior died on a cross for that kind of faith? Do you? No, mind you, all those things are necessary. But those shouldn't be difficult. Let me say that again. Those things are necessary, but they should not be difficult. I have a friend that has tickets to the Colts game. We live in Indianapolis. And if it's not Sunday, sometimes he'll let me use those seats. And they're real close. They're real close. I only do it once a year. And I'm amazed. There's these folks, and they have their seats, and they've been coming for years. And they come to every Colts game. And it's like church to them. They see each other, they meet each other, they high-five each other. How's your children? Oh, I love you. They're bonded over a Colts game. You know those Colts games, that's near up to 3 hours? You guys have been awesome because we have gone close to 3 hours. Those of you just showing up, I'm not going to preach 3 hours. Maybe 4. I'm just kidding. But they bonded over that. The church, people can get bonded over, and you have great fellowship. It's good to have fellowship in the church. It is. There's some churches I know of, they don't even like each other. That's good, and that should be a byproduct. But folks, we are all on a mission. J.B. Chapman, in his famous sermon, All Out for Souls, he gave this illustration. He says to those folks that were listening, it's kind of like an officer during war commanding his soldiers, who says to them, take the hill. And one of them looks and say, I'll try. I didn't ask you to try. Take the hill. And then one said, I'll do it or I'll die. I didn't ask you to die. I told you to take the hill. There has to be a level of determination when you go on this Christian journey, that you understand that this is a mission assigned to us from a holy God who says that we are to follow Him, be like Him, reflect Him, and go win the world. And we cannot do that if they see no difference. All we do is reinforce the false narrative. This doesn't matter. That's all we do. So how do we do this? These points of Ponder Gilead, they are still valid today. See, Christ explained to His disciples, if you truly decide to follow Him, there will be a cost. But much like the very popular book that you may have read, I Am Not a Fan, by Kyle Idleman, we'd rather be a fan than a follower. I'm a fan of a few things. You know what I'm a fan of? I'm a fan of Chick-fil-A. I like me some Chick-fil-A. I got points. One time I got up to 40,000 points. Do you know you're kind of like a king? You walk in Chick-fil-A with 40,000 points. I'm able to say, give me 2 of everything. 40,000 points. I'm a fan of Chick-fil-A. I'm not a follower of Chick-fil-A. You see, the world has misused that. As we go into social media, all you have to do to be a follower is essentially be a digital peeping Tom in someone else's life. That's not what a follower does. Jesus outlines what a follower is. A follower is someone that counts the cost, understands the risk, makes the commitment, and follows. So I pose the question, what separates followers from fans? Is Jesus everything to me, or is he something less? Here are the 3 basic disciplines, as explained to me by Ponder Gillian, that matter still today from a biblical perspective that I'm going to extend to you. The first one is this. Listen to me. I think, because it's not me, nothing I say is really worth writing down. But this is probably something you may want to write down. The first one is this. Rejection of lesser priorities. The rejection of lesser priorities. There's a lot of things that may be good for you, but there are some things that may be good, but does not help you in your discipleship journey. And some of those are different for you than they are for me. I'm not talking about the bad things. We all know the bad things. But there are certain good things that may be hurdles for you that you do not need in your life. So you say no. Because following Christ is more important. For example, we have an example of Jesus, the marriage of Cana. His mama came to Jesus and said, turn this water into wine, because they ran out of wine, remember, right? And he said something as a southern boy, reared here in Kentucky. He said, woman. And when I read it through the Southern Message version, I was like, uh-oh, he's just slapped. If I said woman to my mama, it'd be mama, it'd be daddy, and be all my kin lined up. Boom, 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 boom. But she knew who he was. And essentially, he said, paraphrasing, it's not the time. And I'm meant for bigger things. Now, eventually he relented, but he set up an understanding for us that that was a good thing, but it wasn't the thing he needed to do. The rejection, if you want to grow in spiritual maturity, the rejection of lesser priorities. So the first thing you're going to have to do is establish your spiritual priorities. Do you have a list? You know how I found Lancaster Church Nazarene? I put it in my phone. And that little woman that lives in there told me, take a left, take a right, take a left, take a right, take a left. Take a right. She had a route for me. She gave me directions. I knew my destination, but she had a plan with tick marks. Do you have a plan with tick marks on how you should grow in a spiritual manner? No, sir. Let's work on that. Have you thought about that? And the first step you do to that is the rejection of lesser priorities. Number 1. Number 2, release things to the providence of God. Release things to the providence of God. The example we have of that is Jesus in the storm. Right? Everybody in the storm, and Jesus was asleep. You know why? Because he knew the God of the storm. Folks, hear me. If you do not release some things to the providence of God, you will be so distracted in your spiritual journey that you'll never arrive safely to your destination. There are some things, that's good stuff right there. That's Ponder Gillian stuff. That's good stuff. The world charges you $1.50 for that. Listen to me. Release things, the providence of God. There are some things, my friends, you'll never be able to fix. And there are some things you'll never be able to control. And there are some things you need to pray about it. You need to set it right there and walk away. And don't pick it back up. Now, don't misunderstand me. I had a lady in one of my churches. She said, "Oh, I heard from God. I quit my job today. I heard from God." How'd you hear from God? "Oh, it was a song that came on." I thought maybe she had a gospel station on. "Oh, it was a song that came on." What was the song that God spoke through? "Take this job and shove it." And kid you not, that's truth. Yeah. Honey, I don't know. Lord, he can work through anybody. I don't know if it's Johnny Paycheck. Truth. Sometimes we get our signals propped up. Right? You got to release things to the providence of God that's out of your control. And it'll worry you to death. It will take over your life. It will ruin your relationships. And mainly, it will ruin your relationship with Him. Because as soon as you don't, eventually, you'll blame Him. It's true. Here's the third one. Refuse to pretend. Refuse to pretend. I've been guilty of it as a pastor. Somebody calls me up at 3 o'clock in the morning. "Pastor, you sleeping?" What else am I doing at 3 in the morning? "Pastor, you sleeping?" You know what I say, though? You know what I say? "No, I'm here." Kind of like Mark Lowry. I need to name my bed the Word so I can just tell him, "I'm in the Word." Right? Yeah. Yeah. Refuse to pretend. You see, Jesus used the example of the Pharisees when they go fast. They put ashes on their face. They go out to the corner. "What's wrong with you?" "I've been fasting a good 10 minutes. Refuse to pretend. That goes both ways, folks. When you're hurting, say it. This is your community of faith. When somebody passes you, if you want to be real, be real. Somebody passes you. I know they're just asking you to be polite. "How you doing?" And they keep walking. Have you done that? Yeah. Happens to me every district assembly with DS. "How you doing?" And they just keep walking. Yeah. Keep walking. If you really cared, you'd stop. It goes both ways now. Refuse to pretend. Same time, make sure that you are being open and transparent with where you are. As a pastor, I thought I had to be Superman. You know what happens when you do that? You diminish Jesus and you elevate you. It's supposed to work the other way. refuse to pretend. Rejection of lesser priorities. Release things to the providence of God and refuse to pretend. Is Jesus everything to you, or is he something less? If he is everything to you, count the cost of being a disciple, and it includes some disciplines. Some you already know. You do not know what he wants for your life if you're not listening to him through the word and in prayer. That's a given. But also, if you are so overwhelmed, even if it's good stuff, even if you're doing good things, if you are so overwhelmed, it's crushing you. And it's costing you your walk with Jesus. Get rid of some things. Drop the lesser priorities. Release things to the providence of God. Sometimes you just got to let him have it. Stop picking it up. You're not going to make it better. No matter how much you worry about it, it's not going to change anything. Worry doesn't fix it. It's not magic. But giving it to him, that changes everything. Refuse to pretend. There's a story written by Nathaniel Hawthorne called The Great Stone Face. Anybody ever read that, The Great Stone Face? It's really a good short story. It goes like this. In this village, there was this carving on a mountain of who was prophesied to be the next leader. So many people would ride into this small village, and they would all proclaim, "I'm the great leader!" And they wouldn't be. And they would ride in, and they would say, "I'm the great leader." But there's this young man that was so enamored with the great stone face. Every day, he would get up, and he would draw on his pad the great stone face every day of his life. Until one day, he was an adult. Every day he would do this. This was his practice. Every wrinkle, every eyelash, he would capture. It was his practice on a daily basis. Until one day, someone from the village said, "You are him. You are the great stone face." Here's the point of holiness. To be like Jesus. To reflect him. To empty yourself. Kenosis. Philippians chapter 2. Kenosis passage means empty. To empty yourself. Because if you're holding on to things, you can't receive anything. So let me ask you again. I'm going to ask musicians come up and Take My Life. You've played that. That's when I want you to sing. Take My Life. You couldn't have picked a better song. Take My Life for this service. And this is what I want you to do this last night of revival. I got to tell you, again, you have been so very kind to me. It's the first time I've been able to preach. I've talked to DSs and other people in the denomination, but I haven't preached in 4 years. Thank you for that. Since the time I was 8, since the time I was 10, I preached my first sermon. I've been preaching except these past 4 years, and I've been talking to district superintendents and other folks in the denomination. I'd rather preach. So thank you for that. You got to learn something. When a pastor really gets into a sermon, the Lord preaches it to him or her every day until that day they preach. So I'm asking myself this question. Is Jesus everything to me, or is he something less? Because if every day you're not trying to sketch the master. Pretty soon you stop showing up. Pretty soon you start drawing other things. Pretty soon your life begins to have all of these other distractions. And Jesus is only something. He's not everything. So I want us on this is not a question about salvation, but if you're here, we've preached salvation through this week. You do not know Jesus, I'm telling you folks, we have an altar in the Church of the Nazarene. And Jesus will meet you there. He's already there. It's not magic. But what it represents is you bending to the will of God. You humbling yourself to Him. So if you'll do that, He'll meet you there. You just ask Him. Then we talked last night about holiness, about sanctification, entire sanctification. Remember, prevenient grace, saving grace, sanctifying grace. And if you haven't done that this week, you will not hear a sermon I preach that I don't preach holiness. And they probably know that. I see holiness in almost every book of the Bible. I wish I wanted to preach Genesis chapter 4. That's my favorite sermon to preach. I'll have to preach that one day. Because I think it's all throughout. But this sermon is also geared for those of us who've been on the journey, me included. I don't care how long you've been a member of the Church of Nazarene. I don't care how many great things you've done. It just takes a little incremental distraction to move Jesus from everything to something. And in the week that we recognize as His Passion Week, in the week of His Holy Week, in the week in which He wept for us, in the week in which He would walk that walk for us, in the week in which those thorns would crush into His head and they would mutilate His body and they would put Him through the worst execution so bad that they stopped doing it a couple of centuries later because it was so heinous. So that He could take on the sins of this world for us. How can someone who did that for us, reconciled us to our Father, how can He just be something of our life? So I'm going to ask you to stand.